Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View Webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Walljasper along with Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Walentik. Steve, Missouri is now fresh off its victory over Illinois in the bragging rights game. They pile up a big lead, then end up kind of having to hang on at the end to win it. We've kind of seen two versions of Missouri now. They're 12-0. They're number 8 in the nation. We saw a team in Kansas City against pretty good competition that just sort of blitzed the opponent and never was really challenged. Then Illinois, more of an up and down kind of team. Which is maybe closer, do you think, the real Missouri going forward?
I really think based on what we've seen throughout the other 11 games other than the Illinois game, it's closer to the team that we saw in Kansas City. I think this is a really good Missouri team, the way they're able to break people down and score the ball in so many different ways. And obviously they got out of what they do well during the last 15 minutes or so against Illinois. Weren't really running offense the way that they had so efficiently throughout the early part of the season. But I think, and maybe Illinois gets a little bit of credit for that, they really kind of took away Kim English and Marcus Denman. But I don't think there are going to be that many games where those two guys combine to shoot 5 for 16. Mm-hmm. I thought it was impressive that Phil Pressey and Mike Dixon stepped up the way that they did to make up for those two guys kind of struggling. And then Ricardo Ratliff, who was really a non-factor for most of the Illinois game, comes up with 3 big buckets in the last 3 minutes. That's something I'm not sure we would have seen from him last year on a night where he really struggled with some foul trouble and things. So I think there's a lot of reasons to think that that was more an aberration than what they did in Kansas City.
That's true. I'm just still not quite sure this is a number 8 in the nation type team. I know, Bob Knight was the color commentator. I know in other interviews he did earlier in the day with on the radio, he'd mentioned they were the best team. Missouri was the best team he'd seen all year. I'm not sure I would go that far, just based on the fact that I don't know. They're still got some depth issues. Mm-hmm. To me, I think that's I guess I'm becoming less concerned about their size issues, but they're still a team that doesn't have a whole lot of options if you do get any foul trouble, if you do have guys who are sort of having off nights. So I'm not quite sure I'm ready to go there, but I think even if the Illinois game is the real Missouri, that's not a bad compared to what we really thought they were going to do.
They pulled it out against a team that's borderline top 25.
Right. I mean, it's a neutral site game, and I thought Illinois played pretty well, and Missouri still was able to, once they were challenged, once they were tested, responded, and played a little clearer head to the end of the game than they did during that stretch in the second half, where I thought they sort of reverted to what they did a lot last year, which was 5 different guys trying to save the day with quick shots. Phil Pressey and Michael Dixon in particular, I think, took some quick threes that probably contributed to their problem. But that has been a bit of an aberration for this team, which has been an unselfish team throughout the year. So
I think you're right. This team still has its vulnerabilities, and one of them is Ricardo Ratliff can get in foul trouble, particularly when he's playing against a guy who's 7'1" and reasonably athletic, which Myers Leonard certainly is. They don't have much depth. They've essentially, they played 7 guys against Illinois, and that's really what Frank Haith has gone to. Anytime the game has been competitive this year, he's got 7 players that he trusts, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of reason to think that's going to change as we get into the Big 12 season here pretty soon. But that said,
it's probably one injury away from changing, though. You got no choice if somebody gets
true, and that's always a big key. But assuming they stay healthy, they do have a lot of different guys who can score the ball. Like I said, they took away Denman and English, but that still leaves Phil Pressey, running the show, and he's able to create a lot. Had 18 points against Illinois. Mike Dixon's proven, particularly in these last 3 games, that he can really score the ball. I think he's got 66 points in 3 games off the bench as your 6th man. He's right now, I think, the runaway player for 6th man of the year in the Big 12. We'll see what happens when the games really start to count in conference play, but they've got a lot of weapons, and Frank Haith has done a good job of getting them to be a really efficient team. They struggled rebounding the ball in the second half during that stretch, and I think that's still, it seems like it's that way every year, but that's a concern for Missouri. But they do a lot of things well, and they've done them well for 12 games.
All right, Friday, Missouri plays its first true road game at Old Dominion. This is a team that they played the last 2 years on a neutral site and at home. Now they're going to play them on the road. Old Dominion 6-6. Is this a team that would concern Missouri in a road setting, or do you think Missouri has enough talent that it's not going to be that much of a problem?
Well, it seems a little bit unlikely. I mean, this is an Old Dominion team that was really good last year. Ended up going 27-7, won the conference or the Colonial tournament for the second straight year, and ended up losing by I think 2 points to national runner-up Butler in the first round of the NCAA tournament. When that team came to Columbia, they really just got run out of the gym by the Tigers. I think 81-58 final. This Old Dominion team is not that Old Dominion team. They lost 3 starters from last year, including Hassel, their big man, who was one of the last guys to get cut by the Spurs last week. Talented guy, and they've had some injuries. Bazemore, their best player, had a foot injury before the year and has kind of had a slow start. He's still their leading scorer. I know they're getting a couple guys eligible now and healthy, but they're 6-6. They played pretty well against Kentucky, only lost by 10, but they've lost to Vermont. They'd lost 3 in a row before beating VMI the other night. So other than the fact that it's the first true road game and Old Dominion is a team that rebounds the ball very well, it seems like Missouri's got too much for the Monarchs.
Then on Monday they begin Big 12 play. They start with Oklahoma. Then on the following Saturday they go to K-State. Let's revisit the rankings here. When the Big 12 preseason poll came out, how would you adjust it now, knowing what you know now?
Well, let's just focus on the top. When the poll came out, it was Kansas and Texas A&M on top, and kind of made sense. I mean, Kansas, that was almost a default pick. They've won a share of the last 7 regular season titles. You had to go with them. And A&M had a lot coming back. Billy Kennedy's their first-year coach, but Chris Middleton and David LeBeau gave them a pretty good nucleus to start with. Both those teams right now have 3 losses, and Kansas, really talented starting 5, but it seems like they don't have the depth that they've had. Obviously, they had some players who weren't eligible after all. Thomas Robinson's been as good as anybody in the conference. He's the best rebounder in America, and he's scoring a lot too, but I don't feel like they have a ton around him right now that you feel confident in. A&M's had its issues with Chris Middleton being hurt, missed 7 games, and really their season got off to a weird start with Billy Kennedy not with them while he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he was getting treatment for that. So I think they're going to get better, but right now you look at the way they're playing, and you look at the way that Missouri and Baylor are playing, who are 2 of the last 6 unbeaten teams in the country. You have to say Missouri and Baylor look more formidable right now than Kansas and A&M. I think Baylor seems like they're really putting it together, much more so than a lot of people expected, myself included.
They probably should, though. I mean, talent-wise, I think they've got the most talent, don't you?
Absolutely, but you just have seen talented Baylor teams the last few years struggle, defending people, playing on the road. They got a good win at BYU. They got a good win at Northwestern, where they really dominated the game. I think Perry Jones is playing like a Player of the Year type candidate, Conference Player of the Year type candidate, and maybe the team's really benefited, I think, from not having Lace Darius done there. I think
I was never a fan.
I just think the offense works better. They've got a slew of new guards in there, and they're playing through their front court more often. And that's really the strength of that team. They've got a lot of weapons. I think they're really athletic, and they're a team that's going to give Missouri a lot of trouble just because of their size and their length. But they're playing very well. I think the Tigers, as we've said, are playing at a really high level right now, and I think Kansas obviously has the talent to hang with those 2 teams. I'm not sure that A&M does, based on what we've seen, and then the rest of the league, really, it seems like there's a drop off after that top 3.
I would include Kansas State in that mix because they're, maybe other than Missouri, been the most pleasant surprise of this. They can always be a little rough to watch offensively, but they've been pretty impressive defensively what they've been able to do, and really their 1 loss to West Virginia is not a bad loss, and it was a close game. So I might be willing to inject them into the race. We'll
see, and I think when Missouri goes to Manhattan, maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I don't think K-State's played an overwhelming schedule. Their trip to Hawaii, they didn't have to play Xavier, which was really the the best team in that field, although Xavier certainly struggled.
They did beat
in the
Alabama
tournament.
pretty convincingly.
Did beat Alabama convincingly. Alabama's kind of been up and down. I think certainly Gibson, their freshman forward, has been a real find. I think there's no question he's been the best freshman in the Big 12 to this point. I think he's leading them in scoring and maybe rebounding as well. Obviously, they play hard-nosed defense. I just don't see the same firepower offensively that they've had the last couple of years, where they had Jake Pullen, who was able to really light it up. And we'll see. I mean, maybe them being physical will give a team like Missouri trouble, but otherwise, I don't see them being able to put up the kind of points that the Tigers seem to put up every time they take the court.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Join us again next week when we will look forward to that game in Manhattan.